So this official Granzort magazine that I got in Japan, it was published in 1990, it contains some rather shocking facts about the characters in this series, facts that we will need a measuring rod to fully understand. So Granzort was broadcast in Japan in 1989 until 1990, 41 episodes by Sunrise Studios. You could call it a sort of follow-up to Wataru, because Wataru had been so successful, and in Granzort, Sunrise Studios used the same idea as in Wataru, namely a boy who is the protagonist who has a best friend. That was sort of the winning recipe. Daichi's best friend is Rabi. So they also have a third character called Gas. What I like with these series, both Wataru and Granzort, but especially Granzort, is that although every episode is quite similar and it's all about conquering the enemy, moving up a level in the hierarchy, and eventually meeting the final boss, there is depth to these anime. They are about loss, about death. But there is also the theme of friendship, and there is quite a heart-wrenching scene when Daichi and Rabi are fighting. And curiously, Gus looks like their child who doesn't want his parents to fight. And then they make up, and that's very sweet. And then they become even tighter, and we get these also heart-wrenching scenes when they are separated and when they scream for each other. There's a theme that evolves throughout Granzort, which is that Rabi is looking for his mother, and I can say that without spoiling too much. And I wonder if one of the reasons why this theme came into this series is that Sunrise realized that many of the viewers were women. And maybe women wanted to see this cute boy cuddle up in the lap of a woman. Because that's what Rabi does all the time. Rabi is also sort of a playboy. He likes girls very much, or at least he says he does. And in fact, in this magazine, it says that Rabi was the most popular character in the show. So not Daichi, who is the protagonist, but Rabi. And why is that? Maybe it is because of the female viewership. Because Rabi was a little bit taller than Daichi. As I said, he was interested in girls. And he was a little bit... he had an attitude, you could say, whereas Daichi is more wholesome. So I think that maybe the boy viewers wanted to be Daichi, because Daichi is, of course, a good person. He's interested in mechanics, in building things, and so on. He's completely uninterested in girls. But maybe the female viewers were in love with Rabi. What's also interesting is that it is full of, or at least it contains some pages with all the robots, which you can buy, of course, because these anime were produced in order to sell toys. They were produced together with toy companies. In fact, when Sunrise Studios was founded in 1972 by people who had previously worked at Tezuka Osamu's studio Mushi, the idea was that Sunrise would specialize in mecha anime to produce robot anime, which was quite complicated with all the animations, and to do that really well. And to do it together with the producers, so they would work tightly with the toy producers. And nowadays Sunrise is owned by Bandai, the toy company. There are all the robots that you can buy, of course Granzort, but also Rabi's Aquabeat and Gas's Winzato. And then all the robots of the enemies, and also the gun that Daichi had. And there are also interviews here with the whole production team. Of course, Ashida Toyo, who is the character designer of both Wataru and Daichi in Granzort, and Rabi, of course, but also with the voice actors. And Daichi and Rabi's voices were made by women. That is usually the case. When there is a young boy in an anime, he is always voiced by a woman. One notable exception, though, Horo Musuko, which was broadcast in 2011, Nitorin was voiced by 14-year-old Hatakeyama Kosuke.
僕は高槻さんに振られちゃったんだけど、友達としてはずっと仲良くしていられるんだって分かったから。
When I told a research participant about that, a woman in North America, she felt very bad about having liked Horo Musuko so much without knowing that the voice was made by a real boy. She really didn't like that because she wanted there to be a border between the fictional world and the reality. And of course, a 14-year-old boy is some kind of real boy that came into this fictional world, according to her. So I'm curious about what you think about that, if you think it would be good that a real boy would voice a fictional boy character, or if you don't care. Anyway, the women do a really good job of voicing Daichi and Rabi. Interestingly, Gasu is voiced by a male voice actor, and his name is Matsuo or something? Yeah, Matsuda Tatsuya. So Matsuda Tatsuya was 23 years old when he voiced Gasu. He even looks a little bit like Gas.
大丈夫です。
I don't think he has done so much more, just like Hatakeyama Kosuke hasn't done so much more voice acting either after Nitorin, I think. The series takes place on the moon, which became inhabitable in 2050 because that's when an earthquake occurred on the moon, and that meant that the moon got Earth-like gravity and also oxygen so that people could breathe. Okay, shall we get into the fun now? Shall we get into the fun facts that I found here? You see, every character has their own spread, and in this spread, not only do we know when they were born, so all of them were born in 2189, because the series takes place in the year 2200, and that means that they are 11 years old now. These spreads contain their measurements. So it turns out that Daichi is actually only 115 centimeters. Yeah, this is how tall Daichi is. So he's a very small boy. A real 11-year-old boy in Japan today would be 145 centimeters in 2015. Rabi is 128 centimeters, so he's taller. And that is closer to what an 11-year-old boy was in 1950 in Japan, because then they were 130 centimeters, and then it went up to 145 in 2015. In 2200, an 11-year-old boy would be 186 centimeters tall if this trend continues. But let's now get to Gas, because Gas is, according to the fact sheet here, only 78 centimeters tall. 78 centimeters, that is, yeah, that's like this. Oops. He's like a little garden, what do you call it? But his weight is 28.4 kilos, so he's actually quite buff or overweight. In fact, if you put this character's height and weight into a BMI calculator, you will see that even Daichi is counted as overweight. Rabi is the only one with a normal weight, and Gas is so much overweight that he's off the scale. The scale only goes to 32, but Gas's BMI is 46.7. And the warning text on this website says that you should immediately see a doctor because this is not healthy. Okay, but it is of course fiction, but I couldn't help measure a little bit. And also checking my own graph from when I grew up, and it turned out that when I was 11, I was 148 centimeters. So much taller than Rabi, Daichi and Gas, but almost the same height as an 11-year-old boy in Japan today. Okay, as I'm editing this video, I'm asking myself, what was the point really? Was there a conclusion? No. So I want to add something that might be a conclusion. What I thought was interesting in doing this video is to reflect upon what do details like measurements and height and weight of characters, what do they add to a character? And I think that just like a backstory, they add some meat to a character. They make them more real in a way. And then I compared the heights of these characters to my own height as an 11-year-old boy, which is quite fun to have because we measured these things in my family. I wonder, do you compare yourself to characters like that also? Actually, I don't think that I've compared myself to a character in that way, in that physical way before. But anyway, what do you think that these concrete details add to a character? I would like to hear that. So you can write in the comments or you can write and discuss on my Discord server. I will put a new invite link in the description to this video.
フローレチュッチュパレードチュッチュ